We have already started to work with App Center, not only to distribute applications, but also to log crashes. So we get information about what is causing our application to crash or what errors are happening as our users use the application. Now, instead of just simply getting information, bad information about our application, most of the times we're also going to need information about the usage, not simply where the application is failing, but maybe in this scenario, for example, how many times are users actually opening a blog post? How many times our application is being opened a day? How many times the application is logging a user in? Maybe we want to know how our user is logging in through Facebook or through Google. So simply add some tracking information about how our application is being used, so as developers we understand what features of our application are more valuable to our users. And there is where App Center can also be of great use. To be able to track these events, not only am I going to need to add the crashes service, I'm also going to need another service. So let me go ahead and write type of right after the crashes, and I'm going to write analytics. To use analytics, I will need another using directive, this one to microsoft.appcenter.analytics. And just like this, actually, I don't have to do anything else for analytics to start being sent over to App Center. Now, what will be sent right now just with this is only information about the sessions, things like the operating system of the devices that are opening my application, the model, some information that is definitely useful, and I don't need to code anything else, but won't allow me to know a lot of things. So like I said, just with this, I will get information about how many times my application is being opened, by what kind of devices, and the things of the sorts. But analytics is a bit more powerful than that. It will allow me to do something very similar to what we just did with this code over here, but of course not track it as an error, track it as an event. So what I will do is just get rid of this throw line of code. And here is where I am actually going to track the fact that one of the blog posts has been opened. So I will again do something very similar to what we did to track an error. I'm going to leave this. I don't think this is ever going to cause a crash or throw an exception, but in case it does, I do have this block. But after this has been set as the source, I am going from analytics, which is requiring another using directive, called the track event method. And notice that this is going to be very similar to the track error method. Of course, this is not going to require an exception. This is going to require a name of the event that I'm tracking. Let's just call this blog post opened. And it optionally can also receive a dictionary of properties like the one that we have over here. So in fact, let me go ahead and create a dictionary that is going to be quite similar. It's also going to be the properties dictionary. It's also going to be a dictionary with a string for the key and string for the value. And in this case, it's actually going to be quite identical. It's going to be about the blog post that in this case was opened, not trying to be opened. And that information is going to be sent over to App Center as we track this event. And something similar you would do maybe to track when the user has logged in, maybe to track when the user is refreshing a list view, many different events that you may want to track to understand a bit better about how your application is being used. So with this, let me again go ahead and test this out to show you over on App Center how this is going to look. And actually before selecting anything, let me set a breakpoint in here. So when I select one of these, I see the breakpoint being hit. Of course, now we're not throwing any exceptions, so the catch won't be executed. Let me just hit on continue. So this should now be sent to App Center. And we see now that the blog post does load, but this is not important. Let me go ahead and test this for Android as well. Here we have the application on Android as well. I'm going to go ahead and select one of these blog posts. We see the breakpoint hit. We can hit on continue. And so these events should now have been tracked over at App Center for both Android and iOS. So let me stop the application from running and navigate over to App Center to show you. So back here in App Center, let me go ahead and show you iOS first. All we have to do is navigate over to Analytics in this case. Select, by the way, notice that we start to see some information that doesn't need us to code anything. We see the active users, the sessions, the daily sessions per users. This is automatically tracked without us needing to do anything else. Notice that we see languages, users per session, etc. But in the events is where we will find this event that we just tracked. And this has happened only once. And we see the name that we set for the event. And if we select it, we're going to see how many users have triggered this event, the amount of times this has been triggered, counts per user, counts per session. And notice that down here, we see that property that we sent, which blog posts have been selected. In this case, we only see one, and we see the name of the blog post that we also sent as the properties. So there you have it. This is how you are going to be able to track events as well. Now, before moving forward to the next lecture, where we are going to start to show you how to distribute finally to these stores, I want to show you something else. So for that, let me navigate back to Visual Studio. Over here in the post page.saml.cs, where we are tracking the event, we're pretty much tracking it immediately. But it is a good practice to, before tracking anything, evaluate if tracking is actually enabled. So what I can do is, first of all, evaluate if analytics is enabled. Now, we are currently on the constructor. And normally what I do is in the view model, I have a helper for App Center. So I call it App Center helper. And there I have pretty much the same code that I'm about to add along with the tracking of the event. But what I'm going to do here for simplicity is simply create a new private async. This will have to be async, and it's simply going to be a void track event method. And we can make this method receive the dictionary, and it is this method the one that I will execute. So this method is going to contain the tracking of the event. So let me move this code over here inside of the method, and instead of this method, I will simply call the track event and send the properties. So all I'm doing is moving this code down here because I cannot await anything inside of a constructor. And down here, I will have to await something. So inside of the if evaluation, I will await to analytics the call to the isEnabledAsync method. So basically, I add this line of code to evaluate if tracking of events is enabled. And if it is, I will go ahead and track the event. So this is a simple node that I wanted to add. And also normally I would have this method over on the view model in a class that maybe is called App Center Helper. But here for simplicity, I'm doing it in here because of course it's the only place where I'm tracking events. But again, normally it would be shared from the view model. So now that you know how to track events and to actually evaluate if analytics is enabled, in the next lecture, let's learn how we can publish our application to the Play Store, that is the Android application, so we can later do this automatically through App Center.